This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Sean096. And Sean096 has this question. It's a follow-up question to our earlier vlog on the subject of the illusory nature of time and the danger of losing one's place in reality when pulling the threads out of one's concept of reality. And if you need a refresher on that, I would refer you to that earlier vlog. But Sean's question is this: if one were to lose one's place in reality, what would happen? Would the person die? Would they cease to exist in their original reality? Or would they remain in that reality and simply appear schizophrenic? And in answer to this, I have to say first that there is a simpler answer and secondly a more complex answer. And I think that you'll see how they go together as we work through them. In the simpler answer, I would say that in my experience, the person would simply appear to have lost their connection to reality. Perhaps you might say they would appear schizophrenic, you might say they would appear mentally ill, you might say they would simply appear disconnected. It would have to do to some extent with exactly how drastically they had lost their connection to reality, their place in reality. If it was a very drastic break, they would certainly appear totally crazy. If it was only a slight break, they might not appear so crazy, but you would be able to tell there was something wrong, I would think. And I think that you do in fact see this in some people who practice metaphysics without sufficient grounding in self-reference. And I think that it's very important, as I said before, to have that grounding, to have that self-reference, that self-knowledge, that understanding of what your reality is, if you're going to start transcending the everyday reality. Now, having said that, the more complex answer to whether the person would die or be sucked out of their reality or remain in their reality but appear crazy is yes. It could be any of the above and it could be all of the above at once. Because once we start talking about timelines and probabilities and the illusory nature of time, it's not necessarily a single answer, because several different timelines can come from the same event. And it could very well be that in losing their place in reality, the person's consciousness could move from one timeline to another, which might end their original existence in their original timeline, or it might not. And the soul has numerous incarnations going at any given moment because it's all simultaneous in the end. It only appears to be chronological because we use time to order our experiences in such a way that we can mentally comprehend them. But when we transcend that mental plane, that goes away, and it becomes a different matter. So how would this affect a person who had lost their place in time? Well, if they did die in their particular timeline that they began in, that doesn't mean they'd die in any other. And just because they've lost their place in reality in one timeline doesn't mean they've done so in all of them. But if they were to die, well, you would never know. You would not be aware that they had lost their place in time, so if death were the result, it would be kind of irrelevant to anyone else. And if they were to cease to exist in that original timeline in one way or another, the answer is the same. It would affect only themselves. But the ones that you are aware of who've lost their place in time usually appear to have some sort of mental illness or another. Sometimes they're aware of what they've done, and sometimes they're not, nor am I saying that all mental illness is because of people having tampered with their relationship to reality, but I think in some cases that does in fact happen, that a person who has worked with transcending time or space and other aspects of what we commonly refer to as reality will lose their place in reality and appear mentally ill. It isn't necessarily the same mental illness that other people might have, but that disconnection from reality, I think, would impress most people as being mental illness. And when someone has done this, they often appear unable to analyze their experiences because they're not able to, because they're not experiencing them sequentially. They sometimes appear to be dealing with other worlds at the same time because because they've broken down those walls. And this is why if you're going to do work at that level, you need to be very grounded, very clear on who you are, and very clear on maintaining your balance. and otherwise you should not work at that level. And people love to talk about how dangerous magic is, and then they talk about these silly little things that are not dangerous to anyone with any real grounding. And they totally ignore the real dangers, and they are these: losing your place in reality in the various different ways you can do it. That is not to say that working with these higher ideas, that dealing with multiple timelines, probabilities, the illusory nature of time, etc., necessarily lead one to lose one's place in reality. They don't, if you approach it in the right way, and if you learn it in a way that maintains your groundedness and your self-reference. But it is something that does offer some real dangers in the nature of losing your place in time and space. So, that would be my answer to the question. I hope you find it helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you for Pagans Tonight Radio. Pagans Tonight Radio is an online radio network with different hosts and different shows 7 nights a week. There's something for every taste, including Spanish language programming on Saturday evening. Check out paganstonight.com today.